Picture this: the world's most trusted car brand exposed in a colossal lie. In today's video, we're diving deep into the Volkswagen emissions scandal. We'll break down what happened, the background of the deceit, Volkswagen's reaction, and the public's explosive response. Join us as we uncover the shocking truth behind this automotive controversy. The Volkswagen emissions scandal, also known as dieselgate, began in September 2015 when the United States Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, discovered that Volkswagen had been cheating emissions tests. They found that VW had programmed their diesel engines to activate emissions controls only during lab tests, making them appear much cleaner than they actually were. On the road, these cars emitted up to 40 times more harmful nitrogen oxides, NOx, than allowed by U.S. standards. This deceit affected about 11 million cars globally, including 500,000 in the U.S. from model years 2009 to 2015. The scandal's roots lie in the stringent emission standards set by both the United States and the European Union. Volkswagen and Audi cars identified as violators were certified to meet the U.S. EPA Tier 2 Bin 5 emission standard or the California LF2 ULEV standard. These standards require that nitrogen oxide, NOx emissions, not exceed 0.0043 grams per kilometer for engines at full useful life, which is defined as either 190,000 kilometers or 240,000 kilometers, depending on the vehicle. These standards for NOx emissions are among the most stringent in the world. For comparison, the contemporary European standards known as Euro 5, the 2008 EU5 compliant, 2009-2014 models, and Euro 6, the 2015 models, only limit NOx emissions to 0.18 grams per kilometer and 0.08 grams per kilometer respectively. Defeat devices, which manipulate emissions controls, are forbidden in the EU and subject to penalties. The issues with emissions testing weren't entirely new. As far back as 1998, a Swedish researcher criticized the new European driving cycle standard for allowing large emission differences between lab tests and real-world driving. In the late 1990s, EPA engineers at the Virginia Testing Laboratory built a system called Rover to test a car's emissions on the road. The project was shut down in 2001, despite preliminary tests indicating gaps between lab and real-world emissions of about 10 to 20%. In 2011, the European Commission's Joint Research Center published a report finding that the average on-road NOx emission of all tested diesel vehicles was significantly higher than the emission limits. They warned that modern vehicles could detect when they were being tested in a lab and alter their emissions performance accordingly. Despite these warnings, European governments and the European Commission struggled to take effective action. In late 2012, the International Council on Clean Transportation, ICCT, an independent body, sought to study on-road emissions of clean diesel cars sold in the U.S. Researchers at West Virginia University's Center for Alternative Fuels Engines and Emissions, WVU-CAFE, were awarded a $70,000 grant to test U.S.-spec diesel vehicles with different emission reduction technologies. They chose to test U.S. vehicles because their emissions regulations are more stringent than those in the European Union. Starting in early 2013, researchers at WVU-CAFE tested emissions from 3 diesel cars: a Volkswagen Passat, a Volkswagen Jetta, and a BMW X5. Using a portable emissions measurement system, they collected real-world driving emissions data and compared it with laboratory dynamometer testing. While the BMW met the standards under most conditions, the VW vehicles did not. The Jetta exceeded U.S. emissions limits by a factor of 15 to 35, and the Passat by a factor of 5 to 20. On September 18, 2015, the U.S. EPA issued a Notice of Violation, NOV, of the Clean Air Act to Volkswagen Group, alleging that VW and Audi cars with 2-liter TDI diesel engines sold in the U.S. between 2009 and 2015 had an emissions compliance defeat device installed. This software detected when the car was undergoing emissions testing and activated all emissions controls to meet the standards. However, under normal driving conditions, the software suppressed the emissions controls, allowing better fuel economy at the expense of emitting up to 40 times more NOx than allowed by law. In February 2017, Der Spiegel reported that ex-Israeli diplomat Avi Primor had shown Ferdinand Piëch, the Volkswagen chairman at the time, a document in February 2015 where U.S. agencies warned CEO Martin Winterkorn early about the manipulation. Primor introduced Piëch to Yuval Diskin, a former director of the Israeli Secret Service, Shin Bet, who allegedly knew about the scandal early. However, Primor and Diskin denied tipping off Piëch. In early March 2017, Piëch asked Winterkorn if there had been a warning by U.S. agencies, which Winterkorn denied. This complex background of stringent emission standards, early warnings, failed actions, and critical research ultimately led to one of the biggest scandals in automotive history. Stay tuned as we delve further into Volkswagen's response and the public's reaction to this massive deception. Volkswagen's initial response to the scandal was a mix of denial and eventual confession. For a year before the scandal broke, Volkswagen insisted that the discrepancies in emissions were just technical glitches. However, when confronted with solid evidence about the defeat device, they could no longer deny it. The first hint that Volkswagen was ready to admit their wrongdoing came on August 21, 2015, at a green transportation conference in California. An unnamed company representative informally admitted to Christopher Grundler, the director of the EPA Office of Transportation and Air Quality, that the company had been deceiving regulators. This informal admission was followed by a formal acknowledgement on September 3, 2015, during a conference call with EPA and California officials. Volkswagen executives admitted that their diesel engine software was designed to cheat emissions tests. Volkswagen CEO Martin Winterkorn expressed his deep regret, saying, "I personally am deeply sorry that we have broken the trust of our customers and the public." Initially, Winterkorn resisted calls to resign, but stepped down on September 23, 2015, acknowledging the terrible mistakes of a few people. Volkswagen Group of America CEO Michael Horn was more blunt, stating, "We've totally screwed up," and admitting the company's dishonesty with the EPA, the California Air Resources Board, and the public. Volkswagen announced that 11 million cars were involved in the falsified emissions reports and set aside over $7 billion to rectify the issue. Matthias Müller, the newly appointed CEO, later clarified that the software was activated in only some of those cars. Reports suggested that top management might have been aware of the software's use as early as 2007. Bosch, which provided the software, had warned Volkswagen that using it to cheat emissions tests would be illegal. By the end of September 2015, Volkswagen had suspended several top executives, including Heinz-Jakob Neusser, head of brand development, Ulrich Hackenberg, head of research and development at Audi, and Wolfgang Hatz, head of engine and transmissions development at Porsche. Volkswagen's supervisory board hired the American law firm Jones Day to conduct an independent investigation. To manage the fallout, they also contracted 3 public relations firms and hired former FBI Director Louis Freeh and ex-German constitutional judge Christine Hohmann-Denhardt as their Director of Integrity and Legal Affairs. Volkswagen's response evolved from denial to a more transparent admission of guilt, coupled with internal investigations and attempts to rectify the damage. This multifaceted approach aimed to rebuild trust and ensure accountability within the company, marking a significant chapter in the automotive industry's history. The Volkswagen emission scandal had serious health and environmental consequences. A study estimated that the excess pollution caused by the deceit devices would result in approximately 59 premature deaths in the U.S., primarily due to particulate pollution. Additionally, each cheating Volkswagen car per 1,000 cars increased the rate of low birth weight by 1.9% and the infant mortality rate by 1.7%. NOx emissions also contribute to respiratory problems and heart issues, exacerbating air pollution. In the United States, Volkswagen faced significant legal and financial repercussions. The EPA announced that VW could face fines of up to $37,500 per vehicle, totaling around $18 billion. VW suspended sales of TDI-equipped cars, and the U.S. Department of Justice launched a criminal probe. Numerous state attorneys general and the FBI also investigated. VW eventually settled various lawsuits, including a $193 million settlement in the UK for around 90,000 drivers. Volkswagen was sued by the U.S. Federal Trade Commission for false advertising, adding to the extensive litigation. By June 2020, VW had spent over $33 billion in settlements, buybacks, and other costs related to the scandal. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that VW could face further lawsuits, potentially increasing their legal liabilities. The Volkswagen emission scandal received widespread negative media coverage, with headlines dominating major news outlets. Reuters warned the crisis could harm Germany's economy more than the Greek debt default. Deutsche Welle predicted a lawsuit tsunami and highlighted the damage to the Made in Germany brand. Popular Mechanics called the scandal much worse than a recall, emphasizing VW's cynical deceit. Despite the scandal, public opinion was mixed. In Germany, 55% still had faith in Volkswagen, with many believing other car makers were equally guilty. In the US, nearly 50% of consumers maintained a positive view of VW, though 64% expressed distrust. Thanks for joining us on this deep dig into the Volkswagen emissions scandal. From the shocking discovery and Volkswagen's response to the severe consequences and public reaction, it's clear this scandal left a lasting impact on the automotive industry and beyond. Don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth stories and analyses, and share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.